Sekeres Price from Wall Center, and today's Bodog poll question: will the Canucks get a shutout win this season? Yes or no? You can vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter. Bodog, your source, free casino games, poker strategies, and sports odds. Bodog line of the day from me: Gonzaga, UCLA have loads of tournament history. They're back at it again Thursday in a delicious regional semifinal. I'm going to take Gonzaga here. The Bruins have a big injury. +2 on your Bodog line of the day. Here he is, normally a Tuesday regular for us, but with a meaty Canucks weekend, we wanted to welcome Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media a day early. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm well. Yeah. 2 games of ridiculous hockey.
What makes them ridiculous?
Well, I mean, are we... I'm really thinking, we saw Saturday night, the Emperor, we were right. The Emperor has no clothes. Come on. Thatcher Demko has his game of the year, and they win. They have a game they have no business winning. It's 6 shots. I mean, as I pointed out in the third period, I did go and remind us all of the worst offensive output the Canucks have ever had. A terrible game in 1996 against the New Jersey Devils. The height of Jacques Lemaire. I was there. It was an awful game. And the Canucks looked like that through, 50 minutes on Saturday night. Like, give me a break. Like, listen, there's been some fun stuff, and I do enjoy it, and wins are more interesting to write about, but you sit there and you go, this is not a win they need. Oh, my God.
Jeff, care to comment on that?
Wow, the ridiculousness, I guess, was the turnaround that they give up 40 shots one night, and then they're supposed to be the tired team, and they get 40 in Anaheim against a Ducks team that had been playing better, but I don't know how, because, man, the Ducks looked totally disinterested, I thought, for much of that hockey game. But if we're sitting here, Patrick, and we're looking at some of the takeaways, there have been a lot of people that have been banging the drum about getting Elias Pettersson closer to the net on the power play.
Yeah.
And it's taken this long. This was game 68 and 69 of the season, and he doubles his power play goal output in Southern California with pretty much identical goals, other than Brock Besser was screened on Saturday night and at the side of the net. But we know that Pettersson has this incredible shot. We know he has an incredible one-timer, but we also know that he has a lethal wrist shot. But people have been saying too far away from the net. He means too much to this team, that he's got to get touches, and they've got to be closer to the net. And I think the proof was in the pudding over the weekend.
Well, and I think it's actually more than just being closer. Think about how he was moving, right? Like, so many of his shots this season have been static. The one-timer's not there. It's not going to happen. That's been taken away. And you look at, say, like JT Miller, what made him, one of the things that made him so effective last year on the power play was that he was moving, right? Like, he was the downhill shooter, but he would move, and he still does it, right? And you think he gets that shot off very often. But yeah, to me, that's what stood out about both those goals. It wasn't just that, he was releasing it closer to the net, was that he was actually moving with the puck. The defenseman, basically, it was trickier for the defense to cover. The goalie, it's just an added dimension that the goalie had to keep track of. And both shots were absolutely lethal and created space for him to get them off.
Are we starting to see real progress, Patrick? Are we starting to see a head coach, an identity, a culture, a structure that can be lasting? And this is not simply just meaningless games against, in some cases, opponents that are desperately out of it.
I mean, we saw some pretty strong performances against Dallas, against Toronto, right? Like, they have had moments where they played well. From that standpoint, I am kind of willing to say, there has been a bit of a bump from Tocchet. I think, as we've discussed before, the fact that they move the puck, like they're actually breaking the puck out, and this is not just our eyes, that, like Cam Sharon has been tracking this, and he says the data shows they're just getting a better job moving the puck, which is a statement about who they had before as much as who they have now. And I made a note about this on Saturday. It was like, this can be the reality when you are dressing an AHL defense. Like, these 3 guys called up, I mean, they played well, they've tried hard, but the reality is, especially if you look at a guy like Brisebois, who isn't a lovely story, but he's still, the Canucks are bleeding so many shots against. Now, some of that's because he's playing with Tyler Myers, and it's been a terrible season for Tyler Myers. But, I it's somewhere in between. There's certainly, there's a direction here. There's sort of I think, a sense of belief. We see how well Quinn Hughes is playing. And I don't think it's any mistake that the run of success has coincided with him playing. I mean, obviously he's playing a ton, but he's playing a ton. He's playing well, and he's not really showing any signs of wear. Like, I think this is the guy he wants to be. The last I checked, I think it was a week ago, he was 9th in the league in average ice time, which is, serious number one defenseman ice time. And he's been full value for it. And obviously, we just talked about Pettersson, the impact he's making. And, JT Miller, feels weird to say, but quietly having sort of turned the corner, I think, on his year, too. Which, actually makes me think, there's two ways to look at this. Why didn't they hire Tocchet sooner? Or why didn't they just stick with Boudreau to the end of the year? Because one way or another, I get this notion that they're trying to build a culture, and they're, that's something that Thatcher Demko brought up, I think, last week. Saying, guys, this is something we need to get sorted before next year. And you know what? Fair enough. But there is that enticing chance. I mean, obviously, they're still in it with a shot to get first overall, to move up to second overall. And as I wrote about, I think on Thursday, like, it's not falling lower doesn't actually make it necessarily any better, because the odds below 7 start getting really weird. I mean, obviously your odds get up to get first overall, but you might lose your step. But, in the end, lower is better. The closer to the start of the draft is better. You don't want to draft 10th. You'd rather draft 6th or 7th, They're still going to get a solid player no matter where they end up. They're just not in the range of the top end. So, yeah, I think in the end, this is a team that has made progress. There's no doubt about that. And most importantly, I think above anything else is the guy we already mentioned, like Thatcher Demko being back to his vintage self is everything this team needed to see, because, when there was that noise, maybe they think about trading Masters, sure, but what are you going to do? Like, Artur Silovs is not, I don't think, going to be your guy. The other two guys they have are good dudes, but like Spencer Martin and Colin Dealey aren't going to take you anywhere. They already tried. So, that was sort of the thing. I said, what if he doesn't get back to normal? Okay, sure, you can trade him, but then what? And then in a way that, that this is probably the biggest thing since Tocchet's arrived, is the return of Thatcher Demko and his return to success. And, we saw that on Saturday night.
Jeff, I know you want to have Adam on a couple of issues here, so go ahead.
I'm just curious your thoughts, because top-end guys performed pretty well under Bruce Boudreau. I mean, Pettersson started slowly. That was one of the reasons Travis Green was ousted. And then Pettersson came on the second half of last season. Obviously, that was a runway to and a launch pad to this season. Quinn Hughes had a good year last year. JT Miller with his 99 points. And so, some of this weekend, you look at who scored the goals for them. Pettersson scores twice. Miller scores. Brock Besser scored, and Hughes is in on all of them. It's now about filling out this roster and surrounding those same top-end guys with better players. And that brings me to the guys that are a little lower in the lineup, the two Russians, the bookends for Sheldon Dries right now. Kravtsov came out of the lineup on Saturday because I think they just wanted Jack Studnicka to get a game here. He had been sitting for a while, but they want Kravtsov to hit and to be not hit, but they want to hit on Vitaly Kravtsov. Mm-hmm. They need to hit on Vasily Podkolzin. And Patrick, I don't want to give up on him, and I'm not going to, but I also need to see something more from Vasily Podkolzin here over these final 13 games.
There's just, unfortunately, just has not been a lot. I mean, I've just got the last 6 games up here. He's not done a ton, 5-on-5. Like, it's just him, Kravtsov, and Dries are playing in their own end. They're giving up shots at twice the rate that they're producing. That's just not what you need at all from even what your fourth line is. If they're your fourth line, and I think that's the overall picture here, is that there was a bump, and this comes back to the earlier discussion of sort of how are they actually playing. There was a bump defensively where they were not giving up as many shots against as they were under Boudreau, but that's, I think, has slid a bit again. They're sliding back towards bleeding shots. Now, not every shot is created the same. The scoring chances, they're at least been getting more, but they're still they're in this, other outside of the Pettersson line. All the rest of their line is basically, I mean, Miller at times has been, sort of 50% in terms of how the play's going, but he's kind of gone bad. I mean, they're trying to play a bit heavier minutes, and I think that's some of it. But the reality is that this team overall, again, has slid back into where it was. And I think that's the statement about the quality of defense. And it's also, you're going to have to find guys on that third line. I mean, this has been a discussion for, I don't even know how long. Like, I actually think about it. Like, think how often we talk about it with Willie. Like, their third line did nothing, and then Travis, it became the same thing there. The third line did nothing. And I don't think Curtis Lazar was signed to be the third line center. They had Horvat, they had Miller, they had Pettersson. I think they thought those guys three were going to go, and then they'd sort of see what would happen. But that's, again, there's just nothing there. And, obviously the failure of Adam Gaudette is part of this story, that he just didn't make it. And here's a guy that probably should have played in the AHL. And, you guys had that good discussion on Friday with Rick about the importance of Abbotsford and how well that's gone. And the impact that's made on some guys even this season. And I look back, I've said this before, you look at that 2017 draft, five guys picked in that draft made the NHL, and three of them probably aren't going to stick. And I have to wonder if that's something with the AHL. I mean, I think back, Jeff, that first road trip I was on, in the very first season, and that's when my very first season, 2018, 2019, when Gaudette gets called up, and he kind of looks at us wild-eyed, can't believe he's already been called back up. And that, it was exciting and wild, but that probably was never the right call. That was a guy that just needed to play. You think way back to Ryan Kesler. Ryan Kessler's first half season as a professional hockey player was in the AHL. He had a full half season to figure out how this game works, and then they flipped him, and I think it was Churov, and they basically gave him a run of games at the end of his season there, and then he was back in the AHL for a full year in the lockout year. And, that was so important to that player's development. Now, I'm not saying Adam Gaudette could have been Ryan Kesler, but there was certainly a notion that he could be a Ryan Kesler-like type player. Now Adam Gaudette's on his fourth organization in 3 seasons, and so maybe it never would have mattered. But yeah, they've got to figure this out. Sheldon Dries has had a nice year. Sheldon Dries is a very good dude, nice guy to talk to. He's got 10 goals. He's dreaming of 15. He's been a useful sort of second, or useful part on the second power play. A guy that maybe, you could stash as a fourth line center. But at the end of the day, that third line, Kravtsov and Podkolzin. Podkolzin's supposed to be a possession monster, and that's been the difficult part. There had been moments, he had a rush. I'm trying to think when it was. I think it was their last home game last week. He had a big rush at the end of the game. It was exciting. He didn't score, but you're like, that's what you want to see from him. But we need to see more of that. And
right, but that's also the point that
that's it.
It was one of those games. It was, one individual isolated play. You can't remember exactly when it was. And, there has to be more across the board. Mm-hmm. And with all due respect to Phil DiGiuseppe, who really is a placeholder for Ilya Mikheyev right now, but in a perfect world, Podkolzin would have done enough here that he'd be playing in that spot with JT Miller and Brock Besser for the final 13 games. But I don't blame Rick Tocchet, because I just need to see more, and I imagine the Canucks need to see more. Again, particularly from Podkolzin. Like, Matthew Boldy had 3 goals yesterday.
Yes.
Podkolzin has 3 on the season, and Boldy was taken 2 picks after Podkolzin in that draft here in Vancouver. So what's done is done. You can't go back and repeat history, but now it's about making Podkolzin the best player he can be. And, there were so many signs in the rookie season. I want to see a few of those signs here with 13 games remaining.
And
go ahead, Patrick.
I was going to say the 3 goals just says everything right there, sadly. Like, that's just not, he started, he struggled, finished the season so well last year. And then this year, it's just been such a wander for him. It's tough to watch.
I did a welcome mat on this within the last couple of weeks. He can't just fade into the sea of Granlunds and be a nothing offensively. And even if he is not producing, that he damn sure better kill penalties. And he's still not at that level as either. And yes, I see either with Boldy or with some others. Canucks fans now doing the woulda, coulda, shoulda with that 10th overall pick in the home draft a few years ago. Some rapid fire here, closer to rapid fire. The Bodog poll question today. Patrick, they have not had a shutout win since December 2021 when Boudreau took over, for heaven's sakes. We're close yesterday. Game.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do they get a shutout win in these next 13?
No.
Okay. Quinn Hughes, 65 and 65.
Right.
Jeff's doing an item on this on the pat down today. 82 is the number, even if he's not going to get to 82 games. Can he get to 85 points? 17 in the last 13.
Yes.
All right. Oh, bold. No on the shutout win. Yes. What's that?
I'm just making a grimace face for those who are only listening.
Hronek and McDonough. When are we going to see them?
Well, I think McDonough needs a practice, so I'm going to bet this week. And I guess we saw Hronek apparently was skating at 8 rinks. Apparently, I guess I found that interesting, by the way, because Canucks have been mostly practicing at UBC, and whether it's true or not, certainly the joke has been it's because Alvin and Rutherford live out near UBC. But obviously, when there's only one guy skating, they go back to 8 rinks, where supposedly they have some casual deal to use the ice. Hronek, I'm going to say next week, not this week.
McDonough needs a practice. I agree. Like, he joined the team out on the road, but it's 4 and 6 again here. They might have a practice on Wednesday, but if they don't practice Wednesday, then they're back out on the road for 3 and 4. Like, I'm just not sure where the practice time is going to come.
Yeah.
And at some point, they may just throw him in.
Wednesday or Friday, right? Like, they absolutely are going to have a practice either Wednesday or Friday of this.
Yeah.
Week.
Friday's in the middle of 3 and 4 with some travel. Friday's a travel day. They got to get to Dallas. So, there won't be no practice on Friday.
Well, that's got to be Wednesday.
No, it's not. It's going to be Wednesday. I have the media schedule calendar up here, and for those who don't know, teams are required to declare 4 days off every month, and they've already. So today was a declared day off. Last Monday was a declared day off. There was a Sunday the 12th was a declared day off, and on Wednesday the 30th is a declared day off. So theoretically, they could take Wednesday off as well, but I just don't see them. They play in St. Louis. Obviously, it's a long flight home, but they're scheduled to have an afternoon practice 1 p.m. on Wednesday. So and then they play Calgary on Friday. I just have a hard time seeing them going 2 days off. I mean, I know they, especially after they took Friday off. I was surprised they took Friday off in LA, that they didn't have a practice there. I mean,
just want to make sure we're not getting confused here. Wednesday the 29th.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Thursday the 30th, they're off. Okay. Wednesday the 29th.
Wednesday the 29th, they're practice. What does it say about Wednesday the 22nd, this Wednesday?
Wait, that's this week. Sorry.
Yeah. That's all right. That's all right.
It says,
Are you trying to press fast forward on the end of this Canucks season, Patrick? It sounds like you're trying to press fast forward.
Yes, I am. So sorry. Today's a scheduled day off. Next Monday's a scheduled day off. Wednesday, they're scheduled to practice at noon.
There you go.
Between the 2 games. And then travel. They've called Friday a travel day to go to Dallas because they got Dallas, Chicago, St. Louis, as Jeff said.
Did you find it at all curious, though, last week when McDonough signed, Tocchet was asked about it, and he said, we'll get him in.
Yeah.
But it certainly didn't sound like there was going to be a long run of games for Aidan McDonough.
No.
Gaudette got 5 when he signed and turned pro. I don't know. I think I'll be surprised if Aidan McDonough plays 5 of the remaining 13 games for the Canucks.
I don't think he's going to play much. I certainly had someone suggest to me that they didn't think Tocchet was. I mean, I'm interested to see the kid, but I'm not just going to throw him in there. Which, I think in a way is actually better. I mean, the old days was. Is it Drew Shore? Let's fly him from Switzerland. Nick, who was it?
Yeah, Drew Shore played on a Saturday in Switzerland and was in the Canucks lineup on a Monday night.
It's just ridiculous. Anyway, that's certainly not how things are going to go here. And so, from that standpoint, that's probably, it is better for the player. Jeff and I were there for Brogan Rafferty and Josh Tevez getting, remember Brogan Rafferty didn't even practice, and he played now. I mean, they had to, apparently, I guess you went to it. I think there was a joke practice in St. Louis at the end of 2018-19 season, but he played in Nashville and just got absolutely overwhelmed by Brian Boyle. I remember at one point just had no idea what was going on. And, so it doesn't matter. You're not just going to throw a kid in there. There's no reason to throw McDonough in there. But, it's now been a week since he played a game, and you're going to need to get some games in. So, no, I would expect that he plays this week. I don't know whether I'm Thursday against San Jose. That seems like a game that probably suits his pace. Vegas a little more, might get a little more exposed.
Just the one thing I would say before we discount how many games Aidan McDonough plays, did they make him any promises to get him to sign on that contract? You do wonder whether they have mentioned anything to him and the agent about how much he will play.
Usually there's something like that. Usually, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's getting paid, which is the big thing. He's getting a big bonus. He gets to, whether he had, I assume he had student debt, gets to pay off his student debt. And onwards and upwards. It's America. Everything costs money.
Yep.
Have you paid yours off, Matthew?
Yeah. Yes. No free lunch. It's been a quarter century, though, so I hope so. Patrick, thank you for this. Appreciate it. Until next week.
Take care, guys.